Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something truly profound, the long ascent, basically the entire history of human evolution. We're going to explore how millions of years of tiny biological upgrades and massive cultural shifts all wove together to create, well, us, modern humanity. If you're the kind of person who loves digging into the deep history of how things actually came to be, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to unpack this incredibly slow biological engine that eventually allowed human culture to just accelerate at a breakneck pace. Let's get right into it.
It all really starts with the ultimate question, doesn't it? How did we get here? It's a question that's fascinated scientists, historians, and honestly, pretty much every human being at some point in their lives. So today, we're mapping out the answer using some fascinating data from our source text. We'll be taking a chronological journey of adaptation, starting an amazing 15 million years ago. Just pause and think about that scale for a second. Millions upon millions of years of these tiny incremental adaptations that eventually led to you and me. We're going to trace exactly how those initial physical changes completely paved the way for massive cultural leaps.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. Our early primate ancestors.
To find the actual starting line of our lineage, we need to transport ourselves back roughly 15 million years. The Earth was obviously a completely different place back then, and our earliest primate ancestors were just starting to establish the roots of our family tree. At this time, we see two key evolutionary cousins roaming around, Dryopithecus and Ramapithecus. Now, the fossil record shows that both of these primates exhibited walking patterns pretty similar to modern gorillas and chimpanzees. But here is where it gets interesting. While Dryopithecus had heavily ape-like characteristics, Ramapithecus presented something slightly different. They had these subtle yet distinctly more human-like traits, particularly when you look at their jaw structure and teeth. Even way back then, 15 million years ago, this specific evolutionary branch was quietly giving us the very first biological hints of our unique future. Let's step back for just a second and look at the big picture timeline here. We're covering massive, almost incomprehensible leaps in time today. We start 15 million years ago with those early primates we just talked about. But notice the immense jump to 4 million years ago, which is when walking upright on two legs finally emerges. I mean, that is 11 million years of incredibly slow, agonizing biological wait time. But then the timeline really starts to compress. Just 2 million years later, boom, we see early tool use. This timeline perfectly illustrates a core theme of our journey today. Biological evolution moves at an absolute glacial pace, but once those foundational physical upgrades are in place, they act as a massive catalyst, allowing our cultural and technological evolution to just accelerate rapidly. Moving right along, Section 2, the shift to bipedalism. So jumping ahead on our timeline to around 3 to 4 million years ago, we find ourselves looking at the shifting environments of East Africa. The dense forests were actually beginning to thin out, and they gave way to these vast open savannas. Now, this environmental shift was a major problem for our ancestors, and surviving it required a vital, life-altering biological solution. Fossils unearthed in modern-day Ethiopia and Tanzania show that early hominids began adapting by walking upright, and this was a massive leap. Standing upright on two legs allowed them to see over the really tall savanna grasses to spot predators, but crucially, it also freed up their hands. Picture this, if you will, these incredibly resilient ancestors standing tall, adapting to this vast new environment, despite being barely 4 feet tall. Pretty amazing, right?
All right, let's keep going. Section 3, tools and bigger brains.
Let's push our timeline forward again to about 2 million years ago. We're still out on those vast East African grasslands, but this is where we meet the Australopithecines and where hominid behavior starts getting remarkably complex. These early hominids maintained a diet that was primarily focused on fruit, but we also start seeing the very first utilization of simple stone tools. Right on their heels, Homo habilis emerges as a defining marker in our evolution, boasting a brain capacity of roughly 650 to 800 cubic centimeters. To put that into perspective for you, that's roughly half the size of a modern human brain. So for the time, that was a massive technological upgrade in their biological hardware. This specific increase in brain volume gave them an unprecedented level of cognitive power that forever changed our trajectory. And you know what? That biological hardware just kept on improving. By about 1.5 million years ago, a species known as Homo erectus arrived on the scene with an even larger brain capacity of 900 cubic centimeters. Discovered in Java back in 1891, this notable increase wasn't just some random occurrence. It was actually part of an incredible biological feedback loop. You see, running a larger 900 cubic centimeter brain requires a massive amount of dense calories. To fuel this shiny new cognitive engine, Homo erectus likely had to incorporate a lot more meat into their diets. This extra processing power, combined with better tools for hunting, allowed them to adapt to incredibly diverse environments well beyond the African savannas. It's just a brilliant example of how a biological change necessitates a behavioral change, which then turns right around and reinforces the biology.
Up next, Section 4, Migration and Early Culture.
So let's jump forward quite a bit now to the era between 100,000 and 40,000 years ago. As hominids continued to spread out, we encounter a Neanderthal man populating regions all across the Near East and Central Asia. And in this era, we transition from pure, basic biological survival into the fascinating dawn of advanced cultural behavior. As they faced harsher, much colder climates, we see these really distinct behavioral shifts emerge. First off, they began purposefully using animal hides for protection against the elements, which clearly demonstrates advanced problem solving. But even more profoundly, they started burying their dead. Think about that for a second. Taking the care to purposefully and ritually inter the deceased is an incredibly profound action. It strongly hints at a budding sense of spirituality, empathy, and early ritual. These are the deeply emotional and cultural foundations that eventually paved the way for modern society as we know it. Which brings us to Section 5, the rise of modern humans. We are finally bringing the narrative into our own era, roughly 75,000 to 10,000 years ago, with the arrival of modern Homo sapiens. Originating in Africa, our ancestors embarked on this massive global migration, spreading across entirely different continents. As they adapted to wildly different climates and environments across the globe, distinct racial groups began to emerge. And as humanity spread during the last ice age, our cultural evolution just absolutely exploded. All those millions of years of biological brain upgrades that we tracked earlier, well, they finally culminated in some major milestones. We see prehistoric cave art that proves humans were capable of deep abstract thought and real artistic expression. We see the advent of agriculture, shifting us from wandering foragers to rooted farmers. And inevitably, this led right into the foundation of permanent human settlements. Guys, this was literally the birth of the complex society we recognize today. When we pull back and look at this entire timeline, one incredibly clear theme emerges from our source text. Human evolution is a rich tapestry that completely interweaves biological changes with cultural advancements. Our physical evolution, like walking upright to free our hands and growing larger, more complex brains, that served as the vital biological engine. But the culture we built using those new biological tools, our art, our agriculture, our communities, well, that's the vehicle we've been driving ever since. Understanding this intricate interplay isn't just about memorizing some ancient history facts. It provides us with vital insights into the factors that have shaped our present reality, and it shows us exactly how our physical forms have always informed our societal structures. All of this leads us to a final lingering thought. We've traced the incredibly long ascent from 4-foot-tall early primates to the creators of these sprawling, interconnected global settlements. Now, the blend of culture and biology has undoubtedly influenced our past, but you have to realize it will also influence our future. Today, our technology and culture are advancing at a pace that far, far outstrips our slow biological evolution. Now that we have the power to alter our environments almost instantly, rather than waiting millions of years to adapt to them, what will our next evolutionary step actually be? It's a genuinely fascinating question to ponder. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.